All right, Kyle Mohan Racing, and we're hanging out in the shop, just putting the hood up on the Formula Drift RX8, and we recently did a video, what rotors do I run in my Formula Drift RX8, and that was a success. I run Series 4 rotors, naturally aspirated, and I lighten them and side cut them, and we're able to spin them to 9,800, 10,000 RPM, roughly 30 pounds of boost, 30 plus pounds of boost, and that generates a safe 800 plus horsepower, and then we're hitting it with another 200 shot of nitrous to get it up over that 1,000 mark. And that's the story of the horsepower we're making and what rotors we're running. So that was a success, and we got asked numerous other questions. The one that was most popular was, what apex seals am I running in our 1,000 horsepower 3-rotor Formula Drift car? So that's what we're going to cover tonight. I hope everybody's having a good week and enjoying what I call the off season, but it's not really off. I'm quite busy. All right, so I've got some stuff here, and really I've got all these apex seals lined up because the simple question of what apex seals do I run in my Formula Drift RX8 is not so simple. Through the years, we've ran and tested multiple apex seals, and some of it was because of necessity, and some of it was intentional testing to find out what worked for our situation and what works in other situations. And that's really something I always remind people is there's not a one-size-fits-all apex seal. In fact, depending on what boost levels you're running, whether it's a street car, whether it's a race car, I have different recommendations, and a lot of what I have learned through the years is based off of what Mazda Tricks also had recommendations on and some of their engine builders per se. If you're running under 18 PSI, it's a street car, pump gas, normal oil metering pump system, then I'd probably be recommending a stock apex seal. Mazda makes fantastic two-piece apex seals. Although they were three-piece originally, I've actually got one of those three-piecers right here, two pieces plus the corner piece. The modern two-piece, one piece plus the corner piece, works fantastic for most street applications and even up into some light-duty race. Now, there are a lot of aftermarket apex seals. I'm not going to go out there and name names. That was pretty wild, right? But everybody has their different recipes, their different stories on what they like. For me, we tested quite a few. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is the Ionetti ceramic apex seal. For years, I ran this seal. And for years, I mean for over 10 years. It's an expensive seal. It's lightweight. It's super strong. It takes tons of EGTs. I absolutely love the Ionetti ceramic apex seal. He does make one-piece and two-piece seals. There are other ceramic seal manufacturers out there, but for me, I always liked going with what Mazda ran in their race cars, and that goes the same with Mazda Tricks. So for a long time, I relied on that simple knowledge that a one-piece ceramic apex seal, 2 millimeter, just like what was in the 787B that ran Le Mans, was what I was running. The good end of that is those apex seals, under perfect conditions, will last forever. And I had at least one set of ceramic apex seals that went over 7 years. With no issues, and I ended up selling that car. Just to give a little bit of history to that, it was a turbocharged 500 horsepower Turbo 2 motor, studded. It ran race gas, then we converted it to ethanol when it got up into the 500 range, and the motor ran for 7 years strong. We ran it in Formula Drift, Time Attack, Gincana, and then sold it overseas. Now, I will say there is one downside to the Ionetti ceramics, or any ceramic apex seal that is, and for every bit as strong as they are brittle in detonation. And as we got higher and higher into the horsepower realm, we pushed some limits to the edge about 5-6 years ago, and we had a couple catastrophic failures. We learned a lot, but unfortunately those seals that had been with me so long, and the rotors and many things in that were destroyed. And really the same thing can happen with your steel apex seals. Your OEM steels will also shatter. And numerous aftermarket seals, I think that is, you can see that the tip is that extra long tip. That gives some reference to the rotary people out there. But they also break. So in the end, whether it was a customer motor or one of my personal race motors, one of the Mazda Trick race motors, we had to make decisions. What was going to be the longevity of the motor, what were its duties, and within that you started to make choices. A steel Mazda seal will break, certain aftermarket steels break, and ceramics break. So you have to decide, what your goal is. If it's extreme horsepower, extreme runtime, ceramic seals are a great go-to. If it's just a street motor, then you can easily go to, just a OEM seal. In the end, neither of these choices were something that was going to work for my application. We needed something stronger, and for a long time in the drag racing industry, different companies had been making apex seals that were aftermarket steel seals that were basically unbreakable. And as that technology improved, one of the seals that really caught my eye was made by E&J out of the East Coast. And as they started to set national and international records, and as I was in the need for an apex seal, we ended up picking up some of those E&J seals. And that started my current relationship with E&J, and for the past, I'd say 5-6 years, we have been running E&J apex seals, 2mm, 2-piece. Even to the point of I have my own KMR Drift Series E&J apex seal. You can get it from my website, or you can go with the classic E&Js. Now, the reason I ended up going to more of a drag race or extreme high horsepower seal was I needed something that would take the EGTs, that had a good reputation of quality from the manufacturer, as well as I didn't want to sacrifice or tear up my rotor housings. As most of you know, I was also running ethanol, so we had cool intake temps and a somewhat dry fuel. I didn't want to have to excessively lubricate. So, with all of those needs, we surfed the internet, made our choice. We have been very pleased with the results. So, that sums up a little bit of my answer as to what apex seal am I running in my Formula Drift RX8. It is a 2mm E&J, and this particular set of apex seals has been in there for 2 seasons. The compression is still fantastic. In fact, maybe we'll do a compression test on one of these videos live one of these days. I think I've got a new compression tester coming in. But I hope that answers some of those basic questions. Now, as you can see with the setup, I mention it all the time. We're running 30 pounds of boost, about a 200 shot of nitrous. Our EGTs are a little on the high side. We often see anywhere from 16 to 18, 18 obviously being too hot. But I will say that in my case, and I'm always speaking for myself right here, right now, this is me, my engines that I build in my race car, so I don't know what your cocktail of performance is. But for me, they've been working fantastic, extremely reliable. Now, every once in a while, things do go wrong. In the end, we have tested the E&Js. This one right here is one that we had an injector issue with. I can't get it to focus. But This one actually did bend, and you can see just on the tip, it's got a slight bend. Now, this happened in a competition practice. There was nothing wrong with this seal. I have no blame on anybody other than when you're running under extreme conditions and something doesn't work out right. We had a slight fuel delivery issue with one of our injectors, meaning it actually fell out. I don't know who to blame on the crew for that, but it happened. And that left this rotor low on fuel, which would cause a lean air-fuel mixture under boost, which can lead to detonation. So we're pretty sure we had detonation here. And that is what damaged the seal. Now, the good news is we ran the rest of that weekend without an issue. We had one bank that was a little low, but that's pretty amazing in my 20-year history of rotary cars, because the typical situation when you get a lean air-fuel mixture in a boosted rotary is you blow the tip or part of the tip right off. And that's often what leads to this excessive rotor damage. So I always say, in the Apex Seal case, the war of Apex Seals, everybody has to make their own decisions. I leave it up to my customers, and I try to educate them on what causes Apex Seal failure. So when you're thinking about your car builds, you have to think about your Apex Seal in that equation. Is there a chance you're going to see high air intake temperatures? I'm talking above 150, above 180. Anything up in that range can easily lead to potential detonation. It's not something a lot of people think about, but even in my case, this air filter right here close to these fans is not really a good idea. Luckily, we've been able to control our air intake temps, but I would recommend, if I saw this car sitting there, it needs an air box. So maybe that's an off-season project for me. Another thing that can cause detonation would be lack of fuel delivery, fuel pump failure, low voltage within the car's ignition system, some type of crossed ignition, whether it be indirect or direct, meaning a tuning issue, or something relative to the coils or spark plugs or wires. Even down to excessive oil temperature, excessive water temperature can eventually lead, or very quickly lead, to Apex Seal failure. Realistically, the Apex Seal does not spontaneously blow up. And I know everybody out there hates hearing that. I've never seen a rotary motor just suddenly lose an Apex Seal where there wasn't a reason behind it. Sometimes it's the most basic thing, fuel tank slosh. Sometimes it's something very deep down in there. Deceleration on a dyno where there wasn't adequate metering pump and the car wasn't being slowed down led to excessive heat damaging the Apex Seal. And, so sometimes these things can be very, very tricky. I see an interesting question popped up. How do I feel about 3mm? I don't feel that good about it. For me, there's no reason to carry the extra weight. The modification to the rotors cutting the Apex Seal groove can be very tricky. Each Apex Seal groove is technically in a slightly different location. They're matched to the corner seals, so it's not like a CNC program can be just instantly ran. Each rotor has to be independently set up. So overall, for me, if it's a 2mm rotor, leave it 2mm, unless you're trying to make 2,200 horsepower in a drag car and your Apex Seals actually are spontaneously combusting, or if you're having Apex Seal float, maybe I could see some reasons, but at this point in time, there's good enough quality Apex Seals out there from different manufacturers, my choice being E&J. I think Ionetti also has a unbreakable Apex Seal out there. There's some other great manufacturers around the world. So, choose an Apex Seal that's going to match your build. As I was mentioning, if you're doing things like I do, where there is the potential for failure, you may want to consider a drag or softer apex seal, something that's going to bend and allow you to learn as you're developing the car. If it's a road race car or a street car where you're going to expect the motor to be together for multiple years, lots of mileage, then you may want to consider a stock seal, a stock modified seal, DLC coated, WPC treated, or obviously the ceramic seal being still one of my favorite seals when it comes to long-term customer builds. So, I hope some of this helps. I hope my apex seal talk isn't too boring. I think the most exciting point was when the hood prop fell on the race car. Please ask questions. I'm going to be putting this up on my Facebook, up on my YouTube channel, as well as leaving it here on the Facebook page. So I'll make sure to see what topic is abundantly popular for maybe next week's live KMR Shop Talk. Thanks a bunch. Make sure to follow Kyle Mohan. Check out the website. It's going through some updates. And we're going to be out there racing before too long. Everybody stay safe.